questions. So maybe we can go in and introduce ourselves for those who are just joining in, and then we can dive in. Lorna, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. I've been going first the last two, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll join in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lorna Vanderhaeghe. I'm a women's natural health expert, and I've been researching and writing on nutritional medicine now for just about 40 years, so a very long time. I have a master's in science in nutrition and also in biochemistry, and I've authored 13 books, and one of my books is The Smart Woman's Guide to Hormones, which has an entire chapter dedicated to how to have an orgasm. It's all about how to get your libido back and how to, get that spice back into your life. And it talks about all the health issues associated with that. So welcome to everybody, and thank you to Chelan and Nature's Fair for inviting me on this women's series this time around.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am Chelan Wilkins, and I'm a registered holistic nutritionist and a women's health educator. So I've spent the last few years really dedicated to creating a space and a forum for women to kind of open up that conversation about our health. This is the third year in partnership with Nature's Fair of doing the women's series. So I'm so grateful that we're still doing the series together and we're partnering. I thank Nature's Fair for having us. I always, when we go into these series, the first one, I always think we have a month full of these information sessions. And then by the end of it, I'm like, how did it go by so fast? I always have so much fun. And I already get sad that it's almost ending. So this is the third out of the fourth. And I'm very grateful to share this space with you guys. This is an open communication space. And what Lorna and I are both really passionate about is creating communication and a conversation for women around various health issues and hormones and answering all your questions and moving forward. So thank you so much, you guys. We look forward to being here. And I guess we'll dive right in tonight. We're going to talk about libido. And that's it's going to be a really great conversation. And, we're just going to talk about our hormones and libido and the different things that women go through and the different stages. I know for myself, if you've been joining in our conversations, you'll know I'm very transparent and very authentic when I talk about my various health issues, and I'm open about that. And I think that's the best way to have a conversation. So we're going to dive into that. And then I guess, we wanted to kind of recap a few things that had gone with the last couple conversations. We always like to do that. We've already talked about our thyroid health. Last week, we talked about perimenopause and our breast health. And we just wanted to touch a little bit based on our conversation last week, because we want to make sure that everybody who is listening and joining in on those conversations knows, that this is a platform just to promote more awareness and to give you women some guidance and education to go active in your health and to find your voice when it comes to your health and your wellness. And that's what Lorna and I are really passionate about. So we can talk about that now if you would like.
Okay. So last week we had somebody who was really concerned. We were talking about dense breasts and about detecting cancer in dense breasts, which is a big problem. And one of our listeners thought that we didn't like mammograms. Which is not true. First off, mammograms are our main diagnostic procedure that we use to detect cancers. And so if we didn't like mammograms, we'd probably be in trouble, because what would we use? Thermography is something that we can use to determine, changes in the breast, like hot spots and things like that. Mammograms are what our doctors send us for, and we have diagnostic mammograms. But if you're a woman with dense breasts, there's another layer of challenge. The other thing is, and luckily in 2018 in British Columbia, they changed the rules and guidance around this, and all women are now sent a letter when they have their diagnostic mammogram done, advising them of their breast density, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, basically. And then told to discuss it with their doctors. And what we were talking about last week was, you've had a mammogram, now you may have an ultrasound. If you have a family history of breast cancer like I do, and you have dense breasts, then what do you do in addition to that? And my recommendation was to have an MRI on top of your mammogram, your ultrasound, and then an MRI. And I do that every few years. And Chelan talked about her scenario. So just to be clear, we are not anti-mammogram.
Mm-hmm.
We are about having a conversation about what we could do better, how we could have access to better treatments. And one of the big problems, if you read the entire BC Cancer Agency website, which I did today twice, so I want to make sure I'm saying the right information, ultimately they would be recommending MRI too, but they're not available. They're not everywhere. They're not covered by medical in most cases.
Yeah.
Your GP can't send you for an MRI unless you're paying privately. And so it's a real challenge, and I think it's going to change. And I think the only way it's going to change is if we women have more forums like this, where we talk about what we can do for better. And that's really what Chelan and I are all about, is here's what we currently have. Let's strive to have something better for all of us so that we can reduce the outcomes of these very serious cancers.
Yeah. And, and more on that too, it's just, we really want you guys to, from my personal experience and just going through the frustration, we don't want you to feel frustrated. And lots of women, and, Lorna's been in this industry way longer than I have. And even for me being in this industry, a lot of the women that we talk to, it's the same conversation I have with them, is that I wish I would have known. My doctor, I'm finding it's frustrating to ask for things from my doctor. I don't know what to ask my doctor. I feel like they're not listening to me. And so really what I want you guys to take, or what we would like you guys to take away from these information sessions, is the power of knowledge, and knowing that you can request these things, and that there are other options and there are other avenues to complement already the things that you're getting done with your doctor, or being, having the right tools to be like, I'm wondering about this. Because a lot of the times, and I know personally for myself, I've gone in to see my physician and then, walked away and been like, I didn't know I could even ask that, or I could question this. And so it's just really about being proactive in your health, and feeling empowered to, to take care of yourself, and to ask the right questions. And if you want to get more testing, that there is other options out there should you want to do it. And that's what we're trying to give you guys, that information and education moving forward. Yeah.
It's true. And these are all taped. So if you want to go back and listen to our talks, the thyroid talk, the perimenopause talk, the breast health talk, they're all taped. So that's pretty awesome that Nature's Fair makes them available. And, we're really excited to talk about libido and sexual health, because we don't talk about it enough. And, we should be talking more about things that make us feel good.
For sure.
Feel good.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you guys who are out there listening, but I feel like this is, and at any age, this is a conversation that we have with our girlfriends, right? Like this is pretty much how I built the Hot Mess Forum. Was like, I wanted it to be like girl talk, because lots of stuff comes out during girl talk, whether you're having a glass of tea or a coffee or a glass of wine or something like that. This is where we kind of let our inhibitions go down a little bit. We feel a little bit more comfortable, and we talk about this. And a lot of the times when we have these conversations, we feel much better. And I think libido is a very hush conversation when it comes to women. Some women are very active in their sexual health and feel very comfortable, but a lot of us women don't feel comfortable, and we don't understand what's going on in our body, and we internalize that. And that's why I wanted to open this conversation up about libido, because there are many contributing factors to our libido levels, and they fluctuate throughout various ages. And, I'm in my 40s, and, my libido levels are totally different now than they were in my 30s and my 20s. And a lot of that's nature and our hormones. And, some women will go through a peak in their 40s or 50s. They'll have the highest libido levels they ever have. And some women don't. So it really, it depends woman to woman, but there's a lot of contributing factors when we're talking about our libido levels, and hormones play a huge factor in that.
Right.
And that's for men and women, right?
Well, exactly. And remember, we have a cycle every month. If you're still menstruating, the first half of your cycle, estrogen rises, and women generally find that their libido goes up in the first 2 weeks. That's because, hey, this body's smart. Your estrogen goes up. Yeah. Because you're going to ovulate. And so the body's saying, hey, we want to make a baby. And so your estrogen goes up and you have a higher libido. Then it drops right before your period. And that's when your progesterone falls. And when the progesterone falls, or when that progesterone first goes up in the second half, it kind of blunts libido. It makes you, not feel so sexy. And so not only do you go through these changes in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, but you also go through it every month. So take advantage of your hormones. When you're feeling it, go for it. And when you're not, then just know, hey, my hormones have kind of taken a dip. If you're in your 50s and you've gone through menopause, or you're in your late 40s and you're in perimenopause and you've got no libido, then you probably want to look at maybe bumping up your hormones in different ways so that you can get your libido back. And men go through a drop in their libido too. When their testosterone flattens out, they will have erectile dysfunction. And, I was watching a program today, and 50% of men in Canada have erectile dysfunction. Yeah. So if you're a guy and you're battling with erectile dysfunction, you're not going to feel like you want to put yourself in that scenario to have performance anxiety. And women have performance anxiety too. They have performance anxiety about being dry. So men have it about not being able to get an erection, and women have it, oh my goodness, I'm going to be too dry, I'm going to have this, that. We have solutions for all of that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
A bag of tricks.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of goodies that we can throw out there for that. And look at it, stress too. If you've got little kids, I always love this. I used to do talk shows, and then men would phone up. My wife just had a baby, and it's been 12 weeks and she still doesn't want to have anything to do with me. And I'm like, she's breastfeeding, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, she's breastfeeding. Trust me. The hormones that are produced are not sexy hormones. Those are hormones designed to nurture a baby, not to have sex with your husband. So of course she's going to feel like that. And then he was so sweet. He said, oh, I thought it was me. So, we got to remember the guys also have the same feelings that we do.
I think communication is a huge part of this when it's comes to couples, and understanding, because women, we will internalize a lot of things, and so will men. And I know just from my own household, he's going to hate me for talking about this, but for my own house, guys don't want to talk about their hormones. Guys don't think they have hormones. Their hormone they think they have is testosterone, and that is it. And that's fine. But there are other hormones that men do have estrogen. They do have other hormones in their body, stress hormones, all that. They're hormonal beings as well. But when it comes to it, men don't want to think about it's due to my hormones or other things. They don't want to even have that conversation. And I feel like women also don't want to either. But it's really important as a couple to not avoid that conversation, to being like, hey, maybe he's not into me, or vice versa, she's not into me. There's a lot of underlying issues when it comes to performance between a couple. Like you said, women, as we get older, we can have vaginal dryness. It takes a little bit more for us to get turned on. And a lot of that is just because women don't even know what turns us on, because we've just, sex.
Some women don't even know what their parts look like. Get out a mirror and check them out, and pick up a copy of my Smart Woman's Guide to Hormones, because there is an entire chapter that tells you how to have rocking orgasms, and your husband can read it with you, because they don't get a manual either. We have a complicated body construction, so what men think turns us on often doesn't. And and here's the other thing, mismatched sex drive, it can create marriage havoc. And whether it's the woman who has a nice solid libido and the man doesn't, or the other way around. So finding someone with a similar matched sex drive is probably a really good idea. And so the secret is stress lowers your libido. The birth control pill in women, they've now shown very clearly that it kills the testosterone producing cells, and sometimes those cells don't make testosterone anymore. So women will go on the pill and they have no libido. And when they come off, they still have no libido. Or we go on antidepressants, which totally kill your sex drive for men and women. We come off and we can't really get it back. So we've got to be very careful with the drugs because they can often really wreak havoc. And one medical doctor said she felt that the birth control pills should actually have a warning that this may kill your libido and you might not get it back.
Oh, for sure. And even other medications, like I'm glad you mentioned antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. You know, any kind of medication, you know, that you're taking long term can play a role in your libido level. It can affect it. It can affect your hormones.
Anti-inflammatories, you know, people who have arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and they go on these powerful anti-inflammatory drugs, whether they're lots of over-the-counter or prescription ones. Remember, in order to have everything work down there, we need a lot of blood flow. And things need to get engorged, and in both men and women. And if you're on anti-inflammatories, you shut off that process. So blood engorgement doesn't happen. Without that, you don't have pleasure. So, you know, these drugs we got to be really careful with when we're talking, especially if you have a libido that is already challenged. And remember, a lot of it takes time. We need time to be with our partner and to be patient and loving. And I always say that, you know, foreplay does not start in the bedroom. It starts way out here long before you ever get there. Because a lot of women are like, oh my goodness, we get into bed and he rolls over and then he wants it. And I'm like, no, I just wanted him to help me dry the dishes.
So, look at me in that special ways drying the dishes. I've had those moments where I'm like, whoa, like, you know, something they're doing outside of the bedroom. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't just happen in the bedroom. And communication, and I feel like couples, you have to be willing to talk about, and before everybody's like, oh goodness, fantasies, but fantasies are a healthy conversation as well. And, you know, being able to talk about being willing to do different things. And I think we get in a routine, and lots of women I've talked to have been like, it's just like sex with our partner becomes very routine and it's not enjoyable. It becomes an action. And I'm going to speak on behalf of myself as a woman and a mom, and I work and I've got kids, and it's like, where do you fit this into your time? You know, like, especially when the kids were younger, it's like you had a small window for 10 minutes, you know, and that's the only window you got to do. So
someone was banging on the door.
Oh, do you remember those days? Like, Mom, and you're like, just do it already, right? And this is where we as women, I think, shut off because we just want our partners to finish. So we're like, just because, you know, you're focused on them and you're like, I'll just, you know, it's okay. I just want to get it done, but, you know, we're good. And this is where I kind of think that a lot of things kind of spiral out of control, especially when with our partners, is because we shut down what our needs are and what our wants are. And like for women, I feel like a lot of women are disconnected, like you said, with down there. And there's a lot that goes on down there. Yes, it's, you know, we give birth if we have babies. That's, you know, our vagina is it's a very cool body part. We actually have, you know, our clitoris. That is the only body part on us that is meant for sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
Like women actually have a body part purely for pleasure built on us, which is pretty amazing. But how many women know that actually? How many women know how many nerve endings are in the clitoris, and that's what that function is for, that body part, that is just for pure stimulation. So, you know, when women don't have that association with, you know, down below, and they don't think about their pleasure, we get really disconnected from it, and that can affect our libido levels. And I know I actually remember listening to, you know, you talk about this years ago and in your book, but talking about how important self-pleasure. You don't need to necessarily have a partner, but as we get older as well, through our menopausal years, it's still very important to orgasm at least once or twice a week. It's good for, you know, vaginal dryness. It's great to increase, you know, our libido levels. It's good for our hormone health. So, you know, it's really important for us women to to be
you
connected with herself.
Here's another really cool little thing that's so neat about the human body is that the ejaculate in men has hormones in it that are good for women for our lining of our vagina. So there is a synergy there. So they actually give us a benefit, which is kind of nice as well. And, you know, I'm a firm believer, if you don't use it, you lose it. And a lot of marriages really suffer because we don't make time. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. I agree with you. I think a lot of women, you know, I do talks and women would come to me in their 50s and 60s and tell me that they never had an orgasm. They didn't even know what it was. And then they would have one and they would send me an email and say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. This is so awesome.
What was that?
What was that? It's so awesome. But here's the thing. If you're male and you're listening and your libido is low, you know, I would really look at testosterone. I'd make sure that you're safe, you know, with any kind of cancers or anything like that. But I would definitely look at either topical natural testosterone or natural testosterone that's injectable. And get your testosterone levels checked and get a free testosterone level. So it's not that the test is free, it's that the testosterone is free. And get a sex hormone binding globulin test. So they do 3. They do testosterone, free testosterone, and sex hormone binding globulin. Yeah. And men who have big bellies and breasts and are overweight, they tend to be more estrogenic. So their testosterone levels tend to be low. How do you get your testosterone levels up in both men and women without drugs? Lift weights. It's the fastest, easiest way to increase testosterone levels is by lifting weights. And then de-stress. And one of the herbs that we talk about often is ashwagandha. But they did a study in women and they showed that when women took ashwagandha, their libido went up. I think it's had nothing to do with ashwagandha and libido. I think it had to do with the fact the woman wasn't so stressed anymore. Yeah. Could actually relax and was able to get into it. And, you know, the other thing is you need a lot of time for foreplay, and finding out what makes each other feel good, you know, is also important.
For sure. And I think I'm glad you brought up stress, because stress is like the number one. Like that if you're under a lot of stress, it affects you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if you're under a lot of stress, the last thing that you feel like doing is having sex, or, you know, having that, you know, it's just not on your mind. And so when you can reduce your stress levels and exercise, both for men and women, you know, I'm a firm believer that when you feel good, when you have good moods and you're, you know, you're eating healthy and you're moving your body and you reduce your stress levels, you know, you're going to feel better in your body. You're going to feel better about yourself. And that will also allow you to be a little bit more like, you know, it'll help with your libido levels, but it'll also, you'll feel, I want to say you'll have a bit more self-esteem, and you're not kind of like feeling down about yourself. Because I know from my personal experience, when I, you know, after I had the babies and I had postpartum, and, you know, I felt really crummy. Like I had to lose some weight. I felt I had depression. And then once I started doing you know, changing things in my diet and moving my body and losing some weight, I started feeling better about myself. And, you know, my mood shifted. And then, you know, I was, you know, kind of getting back into like, okay, like I feel like I, you know, I have a little bit more energy and I want to, you know, have sex with my husband. You know, I felt good. Like I was like, I'm looking good. Yeah. And, you know, that's things that women do. Like that's what happens to us. You know, we kind of get in these ruts and we're not exercising. We're not eating healthy. We're under a lot of stress. We're not sleeping properly. And it's like the furthest thing on our mind. And I think it's really important for us to set that time to make, you know, for intimacy, but also, you know, to look at the bigger picture. It's not just, you know, let's not just brush it off and be like, oh, it's my hormones and, you know, I'm, you know, in my 40s and I don't need to be sexual. No, you should like, I mean, my goal, actually, to be honest, is to be highly sexual all the way up.
Oh, it's a very important point. Actually, the BC College of Physicians and Surgeons sent out a communique to doctors in BC a few years ago saying that you need to ask your patients, how often do they have sex? Because they have discovered that there is a link to low or no libido, increased rates of heart disease, more depression, those kinds of things. So, and if you're in pain, we got to get your pain dealt with, because you're not, if you're a woman with severe vaginal dryness, there's no fun in that. And I used to have a line of women's supplements that were sold under my own name, and I sold them, but they're still available. And you can get Love Lube, which is a 100% natural lubricant that is identical to your own vaginal secretions. It's not sticky. It doesn't stain. It tastes yummy. It feels like the real McCoy. Like, it literally feels
it's
like
the real deal.
It is. And so, get some of that. The men love it. They really, really like it.
Are the men blushing now?
And, and then look at the things that we can take that increase blood flow and get things moving in that direction, the herbs and the nutrients that can simply make you feel better. And one of the hormones that women take, progesterone, natural progesterone and synthetic progesterones, progesterone blunts your orgasm ability. So if you are a woman who's in your 50s and you've been put on, say, a high dose of progesterone, you may not actually be able to orgasm. And that is so frustrating. Here you are, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm getting a hot flash, but nothing else is happening. Right?
Oh gosh.
It's true.
Well, yeah, it is. And and I think as, like I said, like ebbs and flows, like our libido levels change as we age. But I really want to stress how important it is to, again, go back to self-pleasure and getting to know down there, because when you understand what turns you on and how you can orgasm too, then it doesn't become so much effort. And maybe I'm speaking on my own personal experience, but once I understood what felt good and I felt comfortable, and when we talk about vaginal dryness, the last thing you want to do when your partner wants to have sex and you have vaginal dryness is have it because it hurts and it's painful and it's not enjoyable for either you or your partner, because it's, a lot of friction. But, if you can start to be learning what makes you feel good, and if you're using lube and you're, trying new things, and you can get to a point where you can relax enough to really enjoy sex, you'll be able to have those orgasms. It won't be so much work, because you know what feels good, and it actually works really well with your partner too. It helps them, because I feel like men can kind of be a little lost with what to do as well, and that can be stressful.
Yeah. Do you remember, I think her name was Sue, Dr. Sue, and she was out of Winnipeg, and she had a sex show on radio.
On the radio. Was it Sunday nights?
I think it was Sunday nights.
Yeah.
And I remember watching one where she had all these different vibrators. So, and I remember how cool that was, because one thing she said, they're not really designed for insertion. That's not really, that's really important, because that doesn't even really feel very good. But so in my book, I had a whole section on which vibrators can you buy that will come to your house, discreetly packaged. You don't even have to go and buy them, that are great. And then how to use it. So, because if you have, we have to be really clear. A lot of women have never had an orgasm, a huge percentage of women. So how do you make this all happen? And the cool thing about vibrators, it's like the 30-second orgasm, because
it's quick.
So quickly. There's no work involved if you know how to use it and when you use it. So in my book, I had a whole section on which vibrators, how to use them, and to be careful, because as one of my friends said, who'd never had orgasms before, she's like, I think I'm going to break this thing now. From overuse, right?
I remember in my 20s, we had a group of women, and used to be able to do, the sex toy parties. And, before, back then, I didn't even, we were all giddy girls and we didn't really know. And I just remember the Bullet had just come out. And now today, honestly, now today, if you were to go and buy a vibrator, and there's a bunch of amazing shops that we're both from Vancouver, so there's a bunch of really nice shops downtown that have a beautiful collection, and they really cater to women. Um, they're so fancy and gorgeous now. Like they don't look like they used to. Like they're these beautifully designed. You know, there's been a lot of effort put into the around the woman's body. And so there's a lot of different ones out there on the market. And like you said, they're a really great way to get to explore down there in a nice, erotic way with yourself or with your partner. And I do agree that vibrators for women, a lot of time women think about it just being used, inserted, but there's a lot that you can do with it outside, and whether you use it yourself or with your partner, it can be very, very erotic, and it's very good for your libido levels, and to learn how to, it helps with, your climax, your orgasms. There's different ways that you can orgasm as well. So once you've gotten used to, climaxing on your own or with your partner, but there's different orgasms that you can have. So it's not just a one and done. If the more you do it, the more that you get creative with it, and you can enjoy it and do it on your own as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a workout.
And think about it. There's this operation, well, it's a cosmetic treatment that women are having done now to tighten their vagina, which every time I see ads for that, I laugh, because the best and most awesome way is to actually have sex. And there is this great, people who've listened to my talks in the past know I always recommend this Kegel exerciser that was developed by Dr. Henry Kegel. It looks like a green hot dog. It's a little curved. It has a weight. It's like 1.5 pounds. Mm-hmm. And it's sold online. It's sold by Natural Contours, and it's a Kegel exerciser. But I'm telling you, that thing, if you do these little exercises that they send along with it, and you use some lube if you have vaginal dryness, you will end up with a super powered vagina. And I've had women with prolapse uterus, prolapse bladder, be able to avoid surgery and get their vaginal walls nice and powerful again, like so powerful it's crazy. And then you have really great orgasms as a result.
Well, it is a muscle. That's one thing that, probably a lot of women don't realize, is that our vagina is a muscle. And the more you exercise it, the more you climax, we know when we have an orgasm, we feel it tighten up, right? And so the more that we do that, we work that, and then, like you said, sex can become really more enjoyable. Sorry, my dog just barged in here like a crazy guy. The more it'll be, it can be enjoyable, and even for our partner as well, when we have that climax. And so, there's a lot of benefits other than just self-pleasure with that, the orgasms outside of, pleasure and our climax, but even, lubrication and as we get older.
And then in the health food store, there's a whole section. We were talking about this with Nature's Fair before we came on this evening to talk about what can people use. So there's, long jack, which is also called Uricoma longifolia, which is a herb that gets blood flow happening to that area. L-arginine also works for enhancing libido. There's some other herbs. So, the great thing is the health food store has an entire section now of things that you can both use. And my old Sex Smart product works. It doesn't work if you don't like your partner anymore and you are on antidepressants. So I have to talk about that, because one of the challenges when you're on antidepressants is that they flatten your libido. So if you're on antidepressants, you might just want to go easy on yourself, and your partner needs to learn that while you're on them, it might be hard for you to really want it. And maybe that's where a vibrator comes into play, because then you will get enough stimulation, because they're like super powered, to be able to feel that response enough. But these herbal products are good, and they're safe. This is the good news about our Canadian natural product marketplace, is that Health Canada approves them all. and gives us these licenses and the claims that we have for them. So, you know, it might be something else you want to add to, you know, getting that libido back. But I mean, I think, you know, you and I have talked about this. A lot of what goes on in the bedroom has to start in our head.
Yeah.
And if you think wonderful thoughts about your partner and you want to be with them and you want to be with them and you imagine what they can do to you, just imagining what they can do to you will get things happening for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And feeling confident. And I think women really shy away with asking for what they want. And, you know, maybe, and I don't want to speak on all men, but I feel like men are a little bit more vocal in that area. But I think it's important for women, if something turns us on or if we know what we want, we should be able to ask that and not feel shy or ashamed. You know, and everybody's, you know, whether it's with our partners, on our own, whatever our fantasy, you know, what our fantasies are, you know, if we want to share that, we should be able to, and we should, you know, be able to communicate, you know, the things that turn us on, not feel shy about it. And I know lots of women feel very shy, and we come from a culture where it's very shush, you don't talk about that. You're a woman, you don't want to be, you know, not respectable. You shouldn't be talking about that. But you know what, with your partner, it's when it comes to intimacy and it comes to you guys coming together, it's really important to be able to share that. And I feel like maybe a little bit more now, a lot of couples are learning that, and their intimacy and their sex life is flourishing because they're talking about the taboo things. They're talking about the things that, you know, turn them on, and they're okay with that. And, you know, it's opening up a whole new world for them. And I think that's important. And I know before we got on, I was sharing with Lorna and Haley, because I had this conversation last year on my forum, but I was talking about a couple books that I read, and I think it's great. And I remember, I will share that I did when we were in the pandemic, before you could go into Indigo's and buy books, you could order them online and pick them up at the door. And I remember my husband was out doing errands, and I was like, my books are ready, can you go pick them up at Indigo for me? So he was like, no problem. And they didn't give him a bag, and he went up and gave my name. And this was the book, Pussy Reclamation. Yeah. And the Vagina Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't think anything of it. I thought it would be in a bag. And he literally went up there, picked them up, got to the car, and it was like, are you kidding me? And he's like, what are these? And I was like, trust me, this is going to be good for you later. Trust me. But they're actually they're very good books, and we can put them in the chat. But this one especially talks about a woman getting to know her vagina and connecting herself with her body and feeling comfortable. And I thought it was a very good read. You know, I shared, I'm going to read one line of it because I shared it in my last talk and I really, really liked it. But she says here, I found that when a woman begins to approach her own body as an altar, the results are transformative. When she gives her body delicious attention, like warm baths with rose petals by candlelight, she enlivens her own self of holiness. When she makes delicious, healthy foods served with care and loveliness, she is feeding the sacred fire inside her. When she dresses herself carefully and beautifully, she nurtures the best part of herself. The more she bows before her own altar, the more glorious, powerful, and confident she feels, and the more generous she becomes with others. And I really liked it. So there's a couple great books, you know, that I think women would benefit from if you're feeling that disconnect between yourself, you know, and your libido levels and even your sexuality. So if you're interested, I can share those in the chat later. But yeah, there's lots of information and lots of books, and Lorna's book, you know, about hormones and talking about libido levels. There's lots of information out there, and for women, we shouldn't just shut the door on and having a healthy sex life at any age. You know, we're sexual creatures, we're emotional creatures, and you know, I think more women need to be connected with that and not feel ashamed of it. You know, it's a great way to be with our partners, but it's also, you know, for me, I preach it to all my friends. I said, you know, an orgasm is a great way to de-stress. I mean, you can come home, use your vibrator, de-stress in 10 minutes. Like, it's fantastic.
And, you know, another great book, so one of the things we didn't really get into this in the last talk, but 50% of moms never talk to their kids about their bodies, their sex drive, menstruation, any of that. They just don't. So half of parents can't. So if you can't, or you don't, or you feel so uncomfortable, there's a great little book you can get on Amazon called This is for the Boys. How to Make Love to a Woman and Have Her Begging for More. Oh. It's just great. It's written in a way that, because we don't come with a manual. No. And we all are really different. And as I said at the beginning, female physiology, our structure, when the part that gives us an orgasm is up here and the other part's down there, and if they don't meet, it's really challenging to get what you need. So this book is so great because it teaches men how to make love to a woman and have her begging for more. And it's just
all the wives right now are writing this down.
It's a very, very old book, so it's not like Pussy, which is such a beautiful new book.
Yeah. Oh yes. The best part is like hiding this on your nightstand. He just was so like.
So do you leave that out for your kids? Because I have to tell you a story. When back, many years ago, when my kids were all teenagers, Natural Contours sent me a box, and I'm not talking about a little box, but a giant box full of vibrators. And we had a family Halloween party with a lot of teenagers. And this gigantic, it was a huge box full of different kinds of vibrators because they really wanted me to try them all. And there was
lucky
a lot in there. But the kids took them home. And some of the moms called me and said, "What kind of party were you having?" And anyway.
So, what do you do for a living that you have all these things?
But it was around the time I was writing the book, and yes.
That's amazing.
So a lot of teenagers got some and of course I always had that book, How to Make Love to a Woman and Have Her Begging for More, because it's such an easy way to find out what really works between people.
Yeah.
You had talked about nipple stimulation before we got on, and you haven't mentioned that one.
Well, I think, we should talk about nipple stimulation. I talked about nipple stimulation so much because back in the day, I used to be a doula. And so this is one of the tricks to go into labor is a nipple stimulation. But it also is really good for, increasing, your libido levels. And I know a lot of women, we forget about this area. So if you've had children, and I know for myself for a long time, this was the kids, this area was all for the kids. Don't touch it. Don't go near them. My husband was always like, let me in there. And I'm like, no, this is shut off. Right. But after a while, as the kids get older stuff, there is a lot of pleasure in that. There's a lot of, nerve endings in our nipples that actually releases, when we're breastfeeding, we do release hormones, oxytocin and stuff when we're breastfeeding, and it, stimulates our uterus. But there is a lot of association between our breast and fondling them and our nipple stimulation that can also help with our, our climax. And a lot of women actually find the only way that they can orgasm while they're having sex with their partner is while their partner is stimulating their nipples or playing around in this area while they're having sex. So don't forget about this area, because there's a lot of, nerve endings and a lot of connection between our organs.
And that oxytocin, that hormone that's released, is really powerful. And they even give it as a drug now. You can get a nasal spray. If you've been a bit distant with your partner and you want to fall in love with them again, oxytocin is the love hormone.
It is. It's what we release when we have those hugs and cuddles, and makes you feel good. And a lot of, I think it's important to mention too, intimacy doesn't have to be sexual. It can be just in the moments of, cuddling and holding hands, and just I think too, a lot of couples that I've heard when we're talking about getting back into, being more sexually active with our partners and bringing that connection back, we forget about kissing. And I think kissing is very important. And we get into that busy cycle of just the quick peck on the cheek. It becomes routine, morning, see you later, the quick peck. We forget what it's like to actually have that, the makeout sessions with our partner and that physical connection with kissing. And so there is a combination of things that can bring us back and increasing our libido levels. It's not just about having sex, it's everything else that comes as a package.
Oh, you're absolutely so true.
I mean, I should have been a sex therapist. This would have been a fun.
Well, and in the sex therapy classes, they'll actually tell partners, you're not allowed to have intercourse. You just have to be intimate with each other and touch and get close and create a lot of desire. And, that's what we did as teenagers. We weren't allowed to, so we did a lot of that.
A lot of heavy petting.
Yeah, which, creates a lot of desire.
Well, that's true. And I think I hear so many people, we just don't have time for it. And I can appreciate that. But if we can make time, but you're right. Like, it's even just when you go to bed and you really want to kind of recreate that, it's not even about just even having the intercourse, but it's about fondling and, that yearning for one another again. It's almost like teasing each other till you build up to that climax till you're like, let's just do it now, right? And creating that moment instead of just being, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this when I say this live on the internet, but a lot of the times we get into bed and it's just like, pull it down and let's just do it. And then that's it, right? Like, we got to get away from that. That is not going to make us feel, in the mood. It becomes more of an action and we need to kind of put a little bit more effort into it. And then it usually gets a little bit more enjoyable when we have that.
Yeah, and
hopefully my husband's not listening.
Yeah, before we run out, as I was going to say, hopefully he's not listening. Before we run out of time, I want to talk about hysterectomies too, because if you've had a hysterectomy, that can create a lot of challenges for some women because there are millions of little nerve endings down there. So when they remove your uterus, depending on the way it's done, it really affect your ability to feel pleasure. And some hysterectomies, the way they're done, they shorten your vagina. And so if that happens to you, you need to go have it fixed because that will not be very pleasant at all. So anything like that, and even a lot of women who've had, also had cesarean sections, also say after the fact they just don't have the same kind of response that they used to have it because nerves, that's what makes us have that response is a lot of blood flow to the area, the nerves get engorged, and there's a lot of stimulation, and we need to get that all happening again. And if you do need hormones, some women may need vaginal estrogen. You want to make sure you only use estriol. It's the safest estrogen. The other one is not so good for your partner. It's not so good for you. And estriol is, just a beautiful estrogen that won't increase your risk of cancers. Yeah.
How about, I'm just looking at some of the questions here, and I know we've answered some of them before we get off here, but we did talk about a couple herbs already. And I know one of the ones, maca is good. There's the best thing to do is to go and talk to somebody at a health food store or a health practitioner. If you wanted to go more of the natural route, there are those natural hormone balancing herbs or things that can actually help with energy and increase blood flow and actually even with libido levels. So I just want to say that one of the ones that I have found that worked personally for me was maca. And if I find that a lot of men, and I don't know about you, Lorna, but a lot of men do actually, it does work well with them as well. Some of the ginsengs, but there are supplements out there that can help with, increasing libido levels and helping, balance out those hormones as well.
Probably the one with in regards to maca was predominantly researched in men for enhanced libido. So, not so much in women. And if you are a woman who has endometriosis or heavy periods or fibroids, you probably don't want to take maca. But for men, it does work very well. L-arginine works very well for both. If you have herpes, you may want to be careful with too high a dose of L-arginine and take some lysine to offset it. But long jack, which is this Uricoma longifolia, has some very good research for stimulating the body, and ashwagandha in women. I mean, that study was just amazing how many women had increased desire. And, you know, that it all starts with desire, because if you don't have any desire, you know, you don't even want to begin. So getting those thought patterns in the head and, you know, breathing exercises for women where they breathe right down into the base of their perineum to get connected again. You've got to get connected. And, you know, Joe Dispenza, one of the meditation coaches, teaches people how to get reconnected to that spot, to breathe there so that you can have more pleasure. Yeah.
Well, it really is about connection. I think I've said it a few times tonight, but if we don't know how down there works, and like you said, if you've never looked at it, you guys all have homework now. If you haven't gone down and checked out below,
get a mirror and figure out what works, and, you know,
explore around there.
Maybe I'll cut the page out of the book and post it on social media. Well, I'll probably get banned off Facebook, but because I don't think
we're on YouTube
to do that. When we posted nipples, we had to cover up the nipples. You're not allowed to post nipples on Facebook. You have to put like little hearts or something over top of them. So if you saw that on my Facebook, it wasn't because I wanted to, because I don't think we should cover them up, but I had to.
There's a lot of, you know, for women, there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of, I'm happy to see it becoming more of an open conversation from even just a few years ago. And even within my circle of girlfriends, you know, people feeling more comfortable and open to talk about these things, and especially with their partners. And I hope all of you guys listening got some good value information from us talking about libido levels and feeling a little bit more comfortable. And I hope you guys all can, you know, take some time to get to know your body and to get more comfortable with, you know, your sexuality and to feel comfortable with that. And it's fun, you know, looking at through some of the comments, it's not even just about like women who have low libido levels, but there are women too who have high libido levels and have lots of, you know,
and that's a big challenge if your partner doesn't. Like, totally. I have to tell you that the majority of the emails I get are from women who are like, what do I do with my husband? He has no libido. And, you know, and they don't want to talk about it. So that's what we really they got to go to the doctor, and they got to get a prescription for testosterone. They need to go to the gym or walk or do some physical, even if they just stand in the bedroom and lift weights, because they've got to get some weight-bearing exercise in there to pump up their testosterone. And just like us, you know, when we feel better, when we look better, they feel better about themselves too.
And it releases stress. A lot of men don't realize, because stress manifests in all of us and we all deal with it differently. But I feel like men wear a lot of weight on their shoulders. They internalize the stress, and they don't realize how all the stress that they have in their life plays a role in their hormones, because they don't want to talk about hormones and they don't think that they have hormones. But cortisol is our stress hormone. So when we're under a lot of stress, it's going to affect those. And when we exercise, it actually can help reduce our stress levels. We need to do something, you know, to move our body and get sleep and eat well. And, you know, that will help. A lot of times men, it's just as simple as making a few lifestyle changes before you're like, okay, yeah, I got it back, right? Or if you need to take something.
It's not just about popping Viagra, because that doesn't help them long term, and women generally hate it, you know. Hours of that is not fun.
No, you're going to need a lot more of the love loop.
Yeah.
Good for the man. The woman needs more of the love loop. But it's not treating the underlying issues, right? So it's a short-term solution. And a lot of the times it's just, you know, looking at the bigger picture. Maybe we're under stress, or hormones are imbalanced, or something like that. Or maybe it's just the fact that we are communicating with our partner and we feel very shut down from one another. So
that's true.
I don't know. Should we leave it here?
We should.
Okay.
I think we're good.
We kept it pretty PG. Like maybe we meant it I don't think we went like
we didn't go to
R rated. So I think we're okay.
No. We'll find out.
We're not going to get banned from Nature's
I don't think YouTube will ban us for this.
I haven't seen anybody say, okay, you girls are crazy. But thank you, you guys, so much. And hopefully we will put the books. I will put the books, and Lorna can as well, in the chat here. Actually, I'll just show it up because it's probably easier after we sign off. You don't see it.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah, so if you guys can see this, this is the one that I read that quote from. So maybe screenshot it if you can. If you want to get to know, this is a fantastic book. A lot of great information on this one for sure. I really enjoyed reading it, but it talks everything about down there, and it actually has detailed diagrams. So if you want to learn your anatomy, this is a great one. And this one as well, taking sexy back. How to own your sexuality and create the relationships you want. This is also a really great read. I read this one, I think, in about a day. So it's a really easy one.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Chelan. I won't be here next week. She's on her own with you guys. And thank you to Nature's Fair for having me. And if people want to get in touch with me through Lorna Health, that's my new website, lornahealth.com. Just I welcome that. And thank you very much again.
Yes, thank you, Lorna. It has been amazing having you on the Women's Series. I thank you so much for spending the last 3 weeks with us. For all you ladies for joining in. Yeah, sadly, next week is our last one until hopefully next year again. But thank you all. Haley will choose a winner, and we will we'll send a prize to the store for you. So thank you, guys. You guys have been great.
Yes, thank you both for a wonderful chat tonight. And the winner of our door prize is Amy Ebby. And we will be in touch.
Okay.
Congratulations and
thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, ladies. It's been
Good night.
just a joy. Good night.
Bye.